Right now, in this very moment, you're sitting there with a voice inside your head. That persistent little voice that's been with you your whole life. The one that whispers you can't when you dream big. The one that pulls you back into your comfort zone every time you try to spread your wings. You know that voice, don't you? We all do. It's the voice of limitation, the voice of fear, the voice that's been holding you hostage in a prison without walls. But what if I told you that voice is lying to you? What if I told you that every single limitation you believe about yourself is nothing more than a story you've been telling yourself? A story that's been passed down to you, programmed into you, embedded so deeply that you've forgotten it's just that, a story. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about something you deeply desire, something you've always wanted to achieve or become. Now pay attention to what happens in your mind. Notice how quickly the excuses rush in. I'm too old. I don't have enough money. I'm not talented enough. What will others think? These thoughts feel real, don't they? They feel like concrete walls surrounding you. But here's the life-changing truth I want you to grasp right now. Those walls exist only in your mind. Let me share something profound with you. Every morning, millions of people wake up and immediately put on their invisible straitjacket. They don't realize they're doing it, but they are. This straitjacket is made of beliefs, limitations, and fears they've collected throughout their lives. It's made of every no they've ever heard, every failure they've experienced, every criticism that cut deep into their soul. But here's what's fascinating, and this might send shivers down your spine. You were born without this straitjacket. Look at any child. Watch how they believe they can do anything. They'll tell you they want to be an astronaut in the morning and a superhero in the afternoon. And in their mind, there's absolutely no reason why they can't be both. What happened to that child within you? When did you start believing in limitations? When did you trade your Superman cape for a suit of doubts? Think about this. Every single human achievement that exists today was once considered impossible. Every invention, every breakthrough, every triumph of the human spirit started with someone who refused to accept the limitations others believed in. What impossible things are you refusing to try? What dreams have you buried under the weight of I can't? The mind is like water. When it's turbulent, it becomes difficult to see clearly. When it's calm, everything becomes crystal clear. Your limitations are nothing but turbulence in your mind, clouding your vision of what's... Let me tell you something that might shock you. Your comfort zone, that place you think keeps you safe. It's actually the most dangerous place you can be. It's quicksand disguised as a cozy bed. The longer you stay there, the deeper you sink until the very thought of movement becomes terrifying. But here's where it gets interesting. Every time you feel fear, every time you hear that voice of limitation, it's actually a compass pointing directly at what you need to do next. That resistance you feel, it's not a wall. It's a doorway. Those butterflies in your stomach aren't warning signs. They're indicators that you're alive, that you're growing, that you're on the edge of something magnificent. The same mind that creates limitation also has the power to destroy it. The same imagination that conjures up worst-case scenarios can also envision breathtaking success. It's all in how you use it. I want you to do something right now. Think of your biggest limitation, the one thing you're absolutely convinced you cannot do or become. Got it. Now imagine this limitation as a piece of paper. On this paper is written the story of why you can't. Can you see it clearly? Good. Now in your mind, I want you to crumple that paper. Feel it in your hands. Feel the power as you crush that limitation into a tiny ball. And now throw it away, just like that. Sounds too simple, doesn't it? But this is exactly how you begin to crush the limitations of your mind. You start by recognizing that they are not facts, they are choices. Every limitation you believe in is a choice you make moment by moment, day by day. Think about the countless times you've surprised yourself. Times when you did something you thought was impossible. Times when you pushed through fear and found strength you didn't know you had. These weren't flukes. They were glimpses of your true potential breaking through the walls of your perceived limitations. Your mind is like a garden. The thoughts you allow to take root will grow and flourish. Have you been cultivating limitations? Have you been watering your doubts and fertilizing your fears? Or are you ready to plant new seeds of possibility? The truth that's going to set you free is this: your limitations are not protecting you. They're imprisoning you. They're not keeping you safe. They're keeping you small. And you were not born to be small. Every time you say, I can't, you're not stating a fact. You're making a choice. Every time you say it's impossible, you're not describing reality. You're creating it. Every time you stay within your comfort zone, you're not playing it safe. But here's the beautiful part. You can make a different choice. Right here, right now, you can decide that your limitations no longer get to vote on your future. You can decide that your fears no longer get to drive the car of your life. Take a moment right now and feel the weight of every I can't you've ever believed. Feel how heavy they are. Feel how they've been holding you down. And now imagine yourself standing up, letting these weights fall away. Feel the lightness. Feel the freedom. Feel the power that's been within you all along, just waiting to be unleashed. This is the moment where everything can change. This is the moment where you can begin to rewrite your story. This is the moment where you can decide that your limitations were just training wheels and you're ready to ride free. You see, crushing the limitations of your mind isn't about becoming someone else. It's about unbecoming all the things you were never meant to be. It's about peeling away the layers of I can't until you reveal the I can that's been there all along. Think about water for a moment. When water meets an obstacle, it doesn't stop. It doesn't give up. It doesn't say I can't. It finds another way. It flows over, under, around, or through. Water doesn't fight the obstacle. It adapts. It persists. It continues its journey regardless of what stands in its way. That's the kind of fluidity your mind is capable of. That's the kind of unstoppable force you were meant to be. But somewhere along the way, you forgot. You forgot that you're not meant to be rigid and limited. You forgot that you're meant to flow, to adapt, to overcome. You know what fascinates me most about the human mind? Its ability to create entire universes of possibility or prisons of limitation, all in the same space. Right now, as you're listening to these words, your mind is either expanding. There's no middle ground. You're either growing or shrinking. Which one is it for you? Let me share something powerful with you. Every morning when you wake up, there's a battle that takes place in your mind. It's the battle between who you are and who you could become, between the voice of limitation and the voice of possibility. Most people never realize this battle is happening. They sleepwalk through their days, letting their limitations win by default. But you're different. You're here. You're aware now. And awareness is where transformation begins. Think about this. What if every limitation you believe about yourself is actually a gift in disguise? What if every I can't is really an invitation to grow? What if every fear is actually a compass pointing toward your greatest potential? Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine your mind is in vast ocean. On the surface, there might be waves of doubt, storms of fear, winds of uncertainty. But beneath that surface, there's an entire world of calm, of power, of infinite possibility. Most people spend their entire lives floating on the surface, being tossed around by every wave of limitation that comes their way. But you have the ability to dive deep, to access that quiet place of power within you where limitations dissolve and possibilities are born. There's a truth that might shake you to your core. Your limitations are not your enemies. They're not even real. They're simply signposts showing you where you've stopped believing in yourself. Every time you hit a wall in your mind, every time you think you're actually standing at the doorway to your next level of growth. Take a moment right now. Think about something you deeply want but have convinced yourself you can't have. Feel the emotion that comes up when you think about it. That tightness in your chest, that knot in your stomach. That's not a warning, stop. That's your soul's way of saying this matters. This is worth fighting for. You see, most people misunderstand the nature of limitations. They think limitations are like brick walls, solid, immovable, permanent. But they're more like shadows on the wall. They look solid and scary, but try to touch them and your hand passes right through. Your limitations are exactly like that. They appear solid only because you haven't had the courage to reach out and discover they're not real. But your limitations are actually protecting something. What if they're guarding your greatest gifts, your deepest potential? Think about it. We only put security systems around things of value. Your mind has created these limitations as security systems, protecting you from what it perceives as danger. But what if the real danger isn't in trying and failing? What if the real danger is in never trying at all? Here's an exercise I want you to try right now. Close your eyes and imagine your future self, the version of you who has broken through every limitation you currently believe in. What does that person look like? How do they carry themselves? What light shines in their eyes? That version of you exists. They're real. They're waiting for you to become them. The only thing standing between you and that future self is the limitations you choose to believe in today. You know what's interesting about limitations? They have an expiration date. But most people never discover this because they stop pushing against them. It's like having a door locked for so long that you forget to check if it's still locked. You just assume it is. How many doors in your life have you stopped checking? How many possibilities have you stopped exploring because at one point long ago you decided they were impossible? Let me tell you something that might change everything for you. Your limitations are based on who you were, not on who you were becoming. Every time you say, I can't, you're consulting your past for information about your future. But your past is not your potential. Your history is not your destiny. Think about the technology you're using right now. Just a few decades ago, it would have seemed like magic, like something impossible. The people who created it didn't look at the limitations of their time and say, well, I guess this is it. They looked at those limitations and said, this is just the beginning. That's exactly what I'm asking you to do with your life. Look at your current limitations and say, this is just the beginning. Because it is. Every limitation you break through becomes a stepping stone to your next level of growth. The size of your life is directly proportional to the size of the limitations you're willing to crush. Every time you push past a limitation, your world gets bigger. Every time you challenge a belief about what's possible, your universe expands. But, and this is crucial, crushing limitations isn't about forcing or fighting. It's about seeing through them. It's about recognizing them for what they really are, your thoughts, just thoughts. They have no more power over you than you give them. Imagine you're in a dark room and you're convinced there's a monster in the corner. Your heart races, your palms sweat, you're paralyzed with fear. But when you finally gather the courage to turn on the light, you discover it was just a pile of clothes. Your limitations are exactly like that monster. In the dark, they seem real and terrifying until you shine the light of awareness on them. The voice of limitation in your head isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. It's like an overprotective parent who never wants you to leave the house because the world might be dangerous. But just like you had to learn to thank that parent for their concern and then go live your life anyway, you need to learn to thank your limitations for trying to protect you and then go beyond them anyway. You see, crushing limitations isn't about becoming fearless. It's about continuing despite the fear. It's not about never hearing the voice of doubt. It's about learning to hear it and say, thank you for your concern, but I'm doing this anyway. Think about every major breakthrough in your life. Every time you've grown, every time you've achieved something meaningful, wasn't there always a voice saying you couldn't do it? And yet, here you are. You did it anyway. That's not just your history, that's your proof. Proof that you are stronger than your limitations. Proof that you are bigger than your fears. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the fear to go away. They wait for the limitation to dissolve on its own, but that's not how it works. You don't overcome limitations by waiting. You overcome them by walking straight through them. Imagine if a butterfly waited until it felt ready to leave its cocoon. It would die waiting. The very act of pushing against the limitation of the cocoon is what gives it the strength to fly. Your limitations are your cocoon. Pushing against them isn't just about breaking free. It's about developing the strength you'll need for your next level of growth. Let me ask you something that might change everything. What if your limitations aren't actually about your capabilities at all? What if they're about your identity, about who you think you are? Here's a truth that most people never realize. You don't act according to your capabilities. You act according to your identity. You don't do what you can do, and you do what the person you think you are would do. Take a moment and really let that sink in. That your limitations aren't really about what you can or cannot do. They're about who you think you are or aren't. And that's actually incredible news, Because while changing capabilities might take time, changing identity can happen in an instant. Think about this. How many times have you achieved something and then looked back and thought, that wasn't as hard as I imagined? The limitation wasn't in your capability. It was in your belief about who you were. Let me share something powerful with you. Every morning when you wake up, you put on an identity like you put on clothes. But most people don't realize they're doing this. They put on the same limited identity day after day, wondering why their life doesn't change. But what if tomorrow morning you consciously chose to put on a different identity? What if instead of putting on the identity of someone who's limited, you put on the identity of someone who's limitless? What if instead of wearing your past like a straitjacket, you wore your potential like a cape? Here's the thing about identity. It's not fixed. It's not something that happens to you. It's something you choose. Every moment of every day, you're either choosing to reinforce your limitations or to expand beyond them. Picture your mind like a theater stage. On this stage, your limitations are playing out their roles. They're acting out their parts, telling their stories. But here's the secret that will set you free. You're not just an actor in this play. You're the director. You're the playwright. You get to decide which stories continue and which ones end. But let me warn you about something. When you start to crush your limitations, when you start to step into a bigger version of yourself, something interesting happens. The voice of limitation gets louder. The fear gets stronger. The doubt becomes more intense. And this is where most people make a crucial mistake. They interpret these feelings as signs they should stop. But that's like interpreting a sunset as a sign that light no longer exists. These feelings of fear and doubt aren't signs to stop. They're signs that you're growing. Think about this. When you go to the gym and lift weights, what happens? You feel resistance. Your muscles burn. It gets uncomfortable. But you don't interpret that discomfort as a sign that you should stop. You recognize it as a sign that you're getting stronger. The same is true with your mind. When you push against your limitations, when you challenge your beliefs about what's possible, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to burn. Your old identity is going to fight to survive. But that discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your evidence. Evidence that you're growing, that you're transforming, that you're becoming more. It's a powerful truth that might shake you. Your limitations don't live in your capabilities. They don't live in your circumstances. They live in your imagination. Every limitation you believe in was first imagined before it became real to you. If your limitations live in your imagination, that's also where your freedom lives. Your imagination isn't just for daydreaming. It's the workshop where you can forge a new identity, create new possibilities, and crush old limitations. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes. Imagine watching a movie of your life, but not your life as it is, your life as it could be. Your life without the limitations you've accepted. What do you see? How does that version of you move through the world? What becomes possible when the walls of limitation crumble? See, most people use their imagination to reinforce their limitations. They imagine all the things that could go wrong. They imagine all the reasons they can't. They imagine failure and rejection and pain, and then they call it being realistic. But what if being realistic is actually being blind to your true potential? What if your current reality is just a tiny fraction of what's possible for you? There's something that might surprise you. The most unrealistic thing you can do is to accept your limitations as reality, because your limitations aren't reality. They're interpretations, they're stories, they're choices. Think about water again for a moment. When water hits an obstacle, it doesn't sit there complaining about the obstacle. It doesn't make excuses. It doesn't say, well, I guess this is my limitation. It finds another way. It goes over, under, around, or through. Water doesn't fight with reality. It dances with it. That's the kind of flexibility your mind is capable of. That's the kind of adaptability that's already within you. But you've been taught to be rigid. You've been taught to accept limitations as if they were laws of nature. But here's the truth. The only laws that govern your potential are the ones you choose to believe in. The only walls that can truly contain you are the ones you choose to maintain. Let me share something profound with you. Every limitation you believe in requires energy to maintain. It requires constant reinforcement. It requires you to actively ignore evidence of your own potential. Isn't it exhausting Isn't it time to stop working so hard to stay small? Because that's what maintaining limitations is. It's a form of work. It's like constantly pushing against a door to keep it closed, never realizing that the door isn't locked, that you can simply let go and walk through. Here's an exercise that might change everything for you. Take out a piece of paper right now. Write down your 3 biggest limitations, the things you're absolutely convinced you cannot do or become. Now, underneath each one, write, what if I'm wrong? Just sit with that question for a moment. Feel what it does to your mind, to your body, to your sense of what's possible. Feel how it creates a crack in the wall of limitation. Feel how it lets a little light shine through. You see, the first step in crushing your limitations isn't action, it's doubt. Not doubt in your capabilities, but doubt in your limitations. You have to be willing to question everything you believed about what's possible for you. Because here's the thing about limitations. They're incredibly confident. They present themselves as absolute truths. They speak with the voice of authority. But have you ever noticed that your possibilities speak more quietly? They whisper. They hint. They invite rather than demand. That's why crushing limitations requires something that might surprise you. It requires silence. It requires you to quiet the shouting voice of limitation so you can hear the whisper of possibility. Take a deep breath right now. Feel the air filling your lungs. Feel how your body knows exactly what to do with that air. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to figure it out. Your body in its wisdom knows how to transform that air into energy, into life. Your mind has the same wisdom. It knows how to transform limitations into stepping stones. It knows how to turn obstacles into opportunities. It knows how to take the raw material of your current reality and forge it into something new, something bigger, something more aligned with your true potential. But you have to give it permission. You have to give yourself permission. Permission to be wrong about your limitations. Permission to outgrow your old identity. Permission to become more than you believe possible. Let me share something that might shake the foundation of everything you believe about limitations. Every limitation you hold on to is actually protecting a treasure. Every wall in your mind is guarding something precious. Your limitations aren't your enemies. They're treasure maps in disguise. Think about that for a moment. What if every time you say, I can't, you're actually standing at the doorway to your next breakthrough? What if every limitation is actually pointing directly at your next level of growth? You see, most people spend their lives running away from their limitations. They see them as walls to avoid. But what if your limitations are actually like X's on a treasure map? What if they're precisely marking the spots where your greatest potential lies buried? Here's a truth that might turn your world upside down. Your limitations aren't random. They're not accidents. They're perfectly designed to show you exactly where you need to grow, exactly what you need to face, exactly what you need to overcome to become who you're meant. Take a moment right now and think about your biggest limitation, the one that frustrates you the most, the one that seems to hold you back from everything you want. Got it? Now, instead of trying to fight it or ignore it, get curious about it. What is this limitation protecting? What growth is it inviting? What treasure is it guarding? It never creates limitations around things that don't matter to you. Your mind doesn't bother building walls around empty spaces. The bigger the limitation, the bigger the treasure it's protecting. Think about a pearl for a moment. Do you know how a pearl is formed? It starts with an irritation, a grain of sand that the oyster can't expel. Instead of being destroyed by this irritation, the oyster transforms it. Layer by layer, it turns that grain of sand into something beautiful, something precious. Your limitations are like that grain of sand. They're irritations that you haven't been able to expel. But what if, instead of fighting them, you could transform them? What if each limitation is actually an invitation to create something beautiful? It's a powerful truth. The thing you think is blocking you is actually pointing you towards your path. The wall you keep hitting is actually a door you haven't learned to open yet. Well, let me ask you something that might change everything. What if your limitations aren't actually about your capabilities at all? What if they're about your readiness to receive what's waiting on the other side? Think about this. When you were learning to walk, you fell countless times. But you never once thought, well, I guess walking isn't for me. You never said, I'm just not a walker. You kept going because something deep inside, you knew that walking was your natural state, that it was just a matter of time and practice? What if everything you want to become is just like that? What if it's your natural state, and your limitations are simply the space between where you are and where you're meant to? You're something those people never realize. Like, your limitations are not fixed points. They're not solid walls. They're more like shadows. They appear solid until you shine a light on them, and the light that dissolves them. It's awareness. It's understanding. It's the willingness to look at them directly instead of running away. Take a moment and imagine your life as a garden. Your limitations are like weeds in this garden. Most people spend their lives fighting these weeds, trying to pull them out by force. But what if instead of fighting them, you understood them? What if you realize that weeds often grow where the soil needs attention? What if your limitations are growing exactly where your life needs the most nurturing? Here's a truth that might set you free. Your limitations are not punishment. They're not obstacles. They're opportunities disguised as obstacles. They're growth disguised as resistance. They're strength disguised as weakness. Think about diamonds for a moment. Do you know what creates a diamond? Pressure. Intense pressure over time transforms ordinary carbon into one of the most precious substances on Earth. Your limitations are creating that kind of pressure in your life. But the question is, will you let that pressure crush you, or will you let it transform you? It's like water in a pipe. The narrower the pipe, the greater the pressure, the further the water can shoot. Your limitations are creating pressure in your life. But that pressure isn't meant to stop you. It's meant to propel you. Let me share something powerful with you. Every limitation you face is actually a sign of life trying to break through to a new level. Just like a seed needs the resistance of soil to grow into a tree, your spirit needs the resistance of limitations to grow into its full potential. They wait for their limitations to disappear before they start moving forward. That's like waiting for the weights at the gym to become lighter before you start lifting. The weights don't become lighter. You become stronger. Take a moment right now and feel the weight of your limitations. Feel their presence in your life. But instead of trying to make them disappear, ask yourself, what if they're not here to stop me? What if they're here to strengthen me? You see, most people misunderstand the purpose of limitations. They think limitations are meant to define their boundaries. But what if limitations are actually meant to provoke your boundlessness? What if they're not walls to contain you, but challenges to unleash? Every hero's journey begins with a limitation. Every great story starts with an impossible situation. Every breakthrough comes from someone who refused to accept the limitations others believed in. Here's a truth that might change everything. Your limitations are not the end of your story. They're the beginning. They're not your prison. They're your launching pad. They're not your finish line. They're your starting point. But deep pull, and this is crucial, you have to stop seeing your limitations as your enemies. You have to stop fighting them, because what you fight, you energize. What you resist persists. Instead of fighting your limitations, get curious about them. Instead of trying to crush them, try to understand them. What is this limitation trying to teach me? What strength is it trying to develop in me? What wisdom is it trying to reveal to me? Because here's something profound. Every limitation you face is actually a teacher in disguise. It's trying to teach you something you need to learn, develop something you need to grow, reveal something you need to see. Think about a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. If you tried to help it by cutting open the cocoon, you'd actually be hurting it. The very struggle to break free is what strengthens its wings. Your limitations are your cocoon. The struggle against them is strengthening your wings. But here's the key right to struggle the right way. Fighting your limitations head on is like trying to break down a wall with your bare hands. You'll exhaust yourself, and the wall will still stand. Instead, you need to understand the wall, find its weak points, discover its purpose, and then transform it from within. Remember this, your limitations are not your identity. They're not your destiny. They're temporary structures in the architecture of your growth. They're scaffolding, not prison walls. They're there to support your expansion, not to prevent it. Here we are, at this moment of truth. Everything we've talked about, every insight, every realization, every shift in perspective comes down to this simple question: are you ready? Are you ready to step beyond the familiar walls of your limitation? Are you ready to become more than your past has suggested was possible? Because here's the truth that's been waiting for you all along. Your limitations were never meant to be your life sentence. They were meant to be your life lessons. Every I can't you've ever believed was actually an invitation to prove yourself wrong. Think about this. Right now, in this very moment, there are two voices speaking within you. One is the voice of limitation, familiar, loud, insistent. The other is the voice of possibility, quieter perhaps, but infinitely more powerful. Which voice will you choose to believe? You see, crushing the limitations of your mind isn't something you do once and it's done. It's a practice. It's a daily choice. It's choosing again and again to believe in possibility over limitation, in growth over comfort, in becoming over. Let me share something profound with you. Every limitation you've ever believed in was installed in your mind by someone else's limited thinking. Every ceiling you've accepted was built by someone else's fears. But here's the liberating truth. What others installed, you can uninstall. What others built, you can take a moment right now and imagine your life as a house. Your limitations are like the walls of this house. For years, maybe decades, you've lived within these walls, believing they were permanent, believing they were necessary. But what if they're not? What if these walls are actually made of paper? What if you could walk right through them? It's something most people never realize. The strength of your limitations isn't in their reality. It's in your belief in their reality. The moment you stop believing in them, they begin to lose their power over you. Think about this. Every major breakthrough in human history began with someone who refused to accept the limitations others believed in. Every innovation, every discovery, every leap forward started with someone who dared to ask, what if the impossible is actually possible? And this is crucial, these breakthroughs didn't come from fighting against limitations. They came from transcending them. They came from seeing beyond them. They came from realizing that limitations are not facts, and perspectives can be changed. Here's a truth that might set you free forever. Your limitations are not your identity. They're not your destiny. They're not even really yours. They're borrowed beliefs, inherited fears, secondhand doubts. Isn't it time to return what was never really yours to begin with? Take a deep breath right now. Feel the air filling your lungs. With each breath, you're taking in new possibility. With each exhale, you're releasing old limitations. This breath right here, right now, could be the first breath of your unlimited life. Here's what's true. The power to crush your limitations isn't something you need to develop. It's something you need to remember. It's not something you need to create. It's something you need to uncover. It's not something you need to learn. It's something you need to recall. Think about water again for a moment. Water doesn't fight its way through rock. It flows. It doesn't battle against obstacles. It transforms them into its path. Your mind has this same capacity. You don't need to fight your limitations. You need to flow beyond them. Every limitation you believe in requires energy to maintain. It requires constant reinforcement. It requires you to actively ignore evidence of your own unlimited nature. What if you simply stop? What if you stop maintaining your limitations? What if you stop reinforcing your constraints? What if you stopped ignoring your true potential? Because here's the truth that's been waiting for you. Your limitations are not protecting you from failure. They're protecting you from your own magnificence. They're not keeping you safe. They're keeping you small. And you were not born to be small. Take a moment right now and feel the weight of every limitation you've ever accepted. Feel how heavy they are. Feel how they've been holding you down, and now make a choice. Choose to set them down. Choose to walk away. Choose to become the person you were meant to be before the world told you you should be. Remember this. Your future is not created by what you do. It's created by who you become. And who you become is determined by what you believe is possible. Your limitations are not facts about your future. They're beliefs about your present. And beliefs can be changed in an instant. There's the final truth I want to share with you. The person you are right now, reading these words, feeling these feelings, thinking these thoughts, this person is standing at a crossroads. One path leads back to the familiar territory of your limitations. The other leads to the unknown territory of your potential. The choice is yours. It always has been. Your limitations have only ever had the power you gave them. They've only ever been as real as you believed them to be. And in this moment right now, you can choose differently. You can choose to see your limitations for what they really are. Training wheels that you've outgrown. You can choose to recognize your fears for what they really are. Signposts pointing towards your growth. You can choose to understand your doubts for what they really are. Echoes of an old story that you're ready to rewrite. The same mind that created your limitations has the power to crush them. The same imagination that built your walls has the power to tear them down. The same spirit that accepted these constraints has the power to break free from them. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue to live within the walls of your limitations, or you can step beyond them into the vastness of your potential. You can continue to believe the story of I can't, or you can begin to write the story of I am. The power is yours. The choice is yours. The time is now. Your limitations are not your destiny. They're not your identity. They're not your truth. They're just stories you've been telling yourself. And starting right now, you can tell a different story. You can live a different truth. You can become who you were always meant to be. The only real limitation is believing in limitations. The only real prison is the one built by your beliefs. The only real boundary is the one you choose to accept. So choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose now, because your unlimited life is waiting. Your unlimited potential is calling. Your unlimited future begins the moment you decide that your limitations no longer get to decide who you are and what's possible for you. Time is now. The power is yours. The choice is yours. What will you choose?